The first mistake they made was thinking I didn't already know. And the second? Inviting me to dinner like I was the one walking into a trap. I remember the exact moment it started to feel wrong. Not dangerous. Not yet. Just off. Like hearing your name in a crowded room. But when you turn around, no one's there. That kind of wrong. And I should have trusted it. I really should have. But I didn't. And that's why everything that happened next happened exactly the way it did. My name is Ethan Caldwell. And if you saw me on a random Tuesday morning, you'd probably assume I was just another guy trying to make ends meet. Faded jeans, old boots, coffee in a chipped mug. Nothing special. Nothing impressive. Definitely not someone you'd look twice at. And that's the point. Because the truth is, I own a company most people will never even hear about. But they depend on it every single day. We move freight across 17 states. We manufacture components that keep entire supply chains alive. Last year alone, we cleared numbers that would make people uncomfortable. Not impressed. Uncomfortable. But here's the thing nobody tells you about money. If you don't look like you have it, people will treat you like you don't. And that gives you something priceless. Honesty. Raw, unfiltered, ugly honesty. And that honesty? It's how I saw this coming. Just not soon enough. It started with my daughter. Her name is Emily. And she's everything I'm not. She walks into a room and people notice. She talks and people listen. She believes in people. Even when she shouldn't. Especially when she shouldn't. And that's where Ryan Walker comes in. The first time I met him, I already knew. Not what he'd do. Not yet. But I knew what kind of man he was. There's a look some people have. Like life has never told them no. Like every door they've ever touched just opened. Ryan had that look. Clean suit. Perfect posture. Smile just a little too practiced. Confidence that didn't come from experience. It came from expectation. And that's when something in me shifted. Because men like that, they don't chase opportunity. They position themselves for it. And I could already feel it. Something was coming. I just didn't know what. At least, not then. Dad, you're doing it again. Emily leaned against the kitchen counter, watching me like she always does when she knows I'm thinking too hard. Doing what? That thing where you decide you don't like someone before they've even done anything. I took a sip of coffee. Didn't answer right away. Because she wasn't wrong. But she also wasn't right. He's just polished, I said finally. She laughed. That's not a crime. No, I replied slowly. But sometimes it's a warning. She rolled her eyes. And right there, I almost dropped it. Almost. I wish I had. Because what happened next didn't just change how I saw Ryan. It changed everything. A few weeks later, Emily told me they were serious. Not casual. Not seeing where it goes. Serious. And that's when I did something I hadn't done in over 20 years. Something I promised myself I'd never do again. I got involved. Quietly. Carefully. The way you do when you've spent decades learning how people hide things. I had Ryan looked into. Not just a surface check. Not the kind you run in 5 minutes. I mean deep. Background. History. Connections. Patterns. And what I found. That was the problem. Nothing. Too clean. Too perfect. Like a house with no dust. No scratches. No history. And that's when the feeling came back. Stronger this time. Because real people? They have flaws. They have mistakes. They have something. Ryan? Didn't. And that made him dangerous. But I didn't say anything. Not yet. Instead, I did something smarter. Something quieter. I opened a door. And I waited to see if he'd walk through it. 6 months later, Ryan Walker became the CEO of my company. And he had absolutely no idea. That's when the real test began. Because I needed to know something. Not what he said. Not what he showed. But who he was? When he thought no one important was watching. And for a while, he passed. Better than I expected. He made smart decisions. Took calculated risks. Even impressed people who don't impress easily. And I'll admit it. That bothered me. Because it meant I might have been wrong. And I don't like being wrong. Especially about people. Especially about men around my daughter. But then, 14 months later, everything cracked. It was a Thursday night. Late. Quiet. The kind of quiet that usually means something's about to break. My phone rang. I looked at the screen. Ryan. And I don't know why. But my chest tightened before I even answered. "Hey, Ryan." "Ethan," he said, voice smooth as ever. "I've been meaning to ask you something." There was a pause. Small. But noticeable. "I want you to come to dinner tomorrow." That was it. Simple. Normal. Nothing strange. Except, everything about it felt strange. "Dinner." I repeated. "Yeah," he said. "My parents are in town. They've heard a lot about you." And right there, something inside me went cold. Because people don't hear a lot about me. Not unless someone's talking too much. Or digging too deep. Or both. "They've been asking to meet you," he added. Another pause. Longer this time. And that's when I felt it. That same feeling. But sharper. Closer. Like something was finally stepping out of the shadows. I could have said no. I should have said no. But I didn't. Because there's a version of me that doesn't walk away from situations like this. He walks straight into them. Slowly. Carefully. and with his eyes wide open. "Send me the address," I said. And just like that, the trap was set. Or at least, that's what they thought. The restaurant was exactly what I expected. Quiet. Expensive. The kind of place where nothing has a price on the menu. Because if you have to ask, you don't belong there. I wore my oldest flannel. On purpose. Because how people treat you when they think you're nobody, that tells you everything. Ryan met me at the entrance. Perfect as always. "Glad you came," he said. I studied his face, looking for something. Anything. But it was clean. Controlled. Too controlled. "Wouldn't miss it," I replied. That wasn't true. But he didn't know that. Not yet. We walked inside. And that's when I saw them. His parents. Already seated. Already watching. And the moment I stepped closer, I knew. This wasn't a dinner. This was a setup. I just didn't know the angle yet. But I was about to. Because as soon as I sat down, his father smiled. Not warmly. Not genuinely. But like a man who believed. He was about to win something. "Ethan," he said. "We've been looking forward to this." And right then, every instinct I had started screaming. Because I'd seen that smile before. Years ago. On a man who almost destroyed everything I built. And I hadn't thought about that name in decades. Not once. Until that exact moment. And when his father reached into his jacket and placed that envelope on the table, I knew exactly what this was. Not business. Not family. Not coincidence. This was revenge. And they thought they finally had me. What they didn't know, I'd been ready for this kind of moment for over 20 years. And I never walk into a room without already knowing how it ends. But even I had no idea how far this was about to go. The moment that envelope touched the table, everything slowed down. Not the room. Not the noise. Just my mind. Because I'd seen that move before. Different faces. Different year. Same intention. And that's when I knew. This wasn't just uncomfortable. This was calculated. Very calculated. But I didn't reach for it. Not immediately. And that's where their plan started to crack. Because here's the thing about people who think they're in control. They expect you to react. They need it. They build everything around it. And when you don't, that's when they start making mistakes. So instead, I picked up my fork, cut into my steak, took a slow bite, and let the silence stretch. 1 second. 5 seconds. 10. No one spoke. And that silence? It got loud. I could feel it pressing against the table. His mother shifted in her seat. Ryan stared down at his plate. Didn't move. Didn't speak. And that's when something clicked. Something small, but important. He knew something. Maybe not everything, but enough to stay quiet. And that told me more than anything else. Finally, after what felt like just the right amount of discomfort, I reached for the envelope, opened it, slowly, deliberately, and the second I saw the name at the top of the first page, my chest went completely still. Not racing, not panicked, just still. Because there it was. A name I hadn't heard in over 2 decades. A name I buried. A name I made sure never came back. Daniel Mercer. And just like that, the past wasn't in the past anymore. I didn't react. Not outwardly. But inside? Inside, everything was lining up. Fast. Precise. Dangerously clear. I flipped through the pages. Didn't read every word. Didn't need to. Because I already knew what kind of story this was trying to tell. Half-truths. Twisted timelines. Carefully selected facts. The kind of narrative that looks real. Until you know the whole picture. And they were betting I wouldn't. Or worse. That I'd panic. That I'd try to explain. Defend. Deny. But I didn't. I just looked up. Right at his father. His name, I would soon learn, was Gregory Walker. And he was watching me like a man waiting for impact. "Where did you get this?" I asked calmly. He leaned back slightly. Satisfied. Like he'd been waiting years to answer that question. "My brother kept records," he said. There it was. Brother. So that's the connection. I didn't say anything yet. Just nodded. Let him keep going. Because men like him, they always want to talk. They don't just want revenge. They want recognition. They tell a very interesting story, Gregory continued, about how you forced him out of a business he helped build. There it is. The version. The one he believed. Or wanted to believe. I leaned back in my chair. Took a sip of water. Gave him just enough silence to feel confident. Then I asked the only question that mattered. How long have you been holding on to this? Another pause. But this one? This one wasn't controlled. Long enough, he said. Not a real answer. That told me everything. Long enough for what? I pressed. His jaw tightened. Long enough to make sure justice gets done. Justice. That word. People love using it. When what they really mean is control. Or revenge. Or power. Sometimes all three. I nodded slowly. And what exactly does justice look like to you? That's when he leaned forward. Voice lower now. More serious. Because this was the part he'd been waiting for. I want you to step down, he said. Simple. Direct. Calculated. From whatever position you still hold in that company. I didn't respond. Didn't even blink. So he kept going. I also want a financial settlement, he added. The amount is in the envelope. Of course it is. And I want it handled quietly, he finished. For everyone's sake. Everyone's. That's how they always frame it. Like they're protecting something. When really, they're trying to take something. And that's when I looked at Ryan. Really looked at him. Because up until now, he'd been silent. Too silent. How much do you know? I asked him. Direct. No buffer. No softening. His head lifted slightly. Eyes flicked to his father. Then back to me. I know there was history, he said carefully. History. That word again. Soft. Vague. Safe. But not honest. And I pushed. He exhaled. Ran a hand through his hair. I was told there was a debt. There it is. A debt. Not betrayal. Not theft. Not truth. A debt. And suddenly, everything made sense. This wasn't random. This wasn't recent. This had been building. For years. Maybe decades. And Ryan? He wasn't the mastermind. He was the bridge. The access point. The way in. But the real question was, did he know that? Or was he just another piece on the board? His mother reached over. Placed her hand gently on mine. Too gently. Too rehearsed. This doesn't have to be ugly, she said softly. We're family now. I looked down at her hand. Then back at her face. That smile again. Perfect. Empty. Prepared. And that's when I knew. They really believed this would work. They thought I walked in blind. Unprepared. Alone. That I'd see those papers. And fold. But here's the thing about men like me. You don't survive decades in business without learning one very important rule. You never sit down at a table like this without bringing your own hand. I reached into my jacket. Slowly. Deliberately. And placed my own envelope on the table. Smaller. Plain. Nothing special. But the moment it touched the surface, everything changed. Gregory's eyes dropped to it. Just for a second. But that was enough. What's that? He asked. I smiled. Not wide. Not obvious. Just enough. Insurance, I said. And suddenly, the power shifted. Not loudly. Not dramatically. But enough that everyone at that table felt it. Gregory straightened slightly. Confidence still there. But thinner now. Go ahead, he said. Open yours. I didn't. Not yet. Because this wasn't about rushing. This was about timing. Precision. Control. Your brother's records are incomplete, I said calmly. His expression didn't change. But his eyes did. Just slightly. And that makes sense, I continued. Because people rewriting history don't usually keep the parts that expose them. Now his jaw tightened. There's nothing rewritten about what he went through, Gregory snapped. I nodded. I'm sure that's what he believed. And that's when the tension snapped tighter. Because now, this wasn't a setup anymore. This was a confrontation. A real one. I have the original financial records, I said, tapping my envelope lightly. Every transaction. Every transfer. Every shell account. Silence. Real silence. Not the polite kind. The dangerous kind. I also have testimony, I added. From someone who processed those transactions personally. Gregory didn't speak. Didn't move. But I could see it. That flicker. That doubt. Because deep down, he didn't know the full story. He never did. He inherited a version. And he built his entire plan on it. That was his mistake. You're lying, he said finally. But it didn't sound strong. Didn't sound certain. I leaned forward slightly. Lowered my voice. Not aggressive. Just clear. No, I said. I'm finishing the story your brother couldn't tell. And that's when something shifted in Ryan. I saw it. Right there. The confusion turning into something else. Something sharper. Something more dangerous. Awareness. He looked at his father. Really looked at him. Like he was seeing him for the first time. And that's when I realized. This wasn't just about the past anymore. This was about to become something much bigger. Because Ryan was starting to question everything. And once that happens, there's no going back. But what he was about to hear next, what I was about to reveal, wouldn't just change his perspective. It would destroy it. Completely. And I almost felt bad. Almost. Because the truth, the full truth, it doesn't just hurt. It breaks things. People. Families. Legacies. And in the next few minutes, that's exactly what was about to happen. Ryan didn't blink. That was the first thing I noticed. Not when I mentioned the records. Not when his father's voice started to crack. Not even when the silence turned heavy enough to feel. He just stared. Like his brain was trying to catch up to something his instincts had already figured out. And that's when I knew. This was the moment everything would shift. Not later. Not after dinner. Right here. Right now. I think, I said slowly, folding my hands on the table. It's time we stop talking in pieces. No one interrupted. No one dared. Because something in my tone changed. Even the waiter hovering in the distance backed away. Like he could feel it too. I'm going to tell you a story, I continued. And Ryan leaned forward slightly. Not as a CEO. Not as a son. Just as a man who needed answers. But I need you to listen carefully, I added. Because what I was about to say wasn't just truth. It was a correction. A complete rewrite of everything they believed. And once it was out, there was no putting it back. 30 years ago, I began. I had a partner. Gregory's eyes narrowed. There it is. Recognition. Fear. Something real. We built something from nothing, I continued. Long nights. No money. No guarantees. Ryan didn't move. But I could see it. He was locked in now. Every word mattered. And for a while, I said, I believed he was my brother. Gregory scoffed under his breath. Don't, I said quietly. And just like that, he stopped. Because for the first time that night, he wasn't in control anymore. His name was Daniel Mercer. The name landed. Heavy. Final. And for a second, no one spoke. Because even hearing it felt like opening something buried. Daniel wasn't stupid, I said. He was patient. I paused. Let that settle. Because patience is what makes betrayal dangerous. It didn't happen all at once, I continued. It never does. Ryan's eyes flicked toward me. Then back to his father. Then back again. He was connecting dots. Fast. Small withdrawals at first, I said. Amounts no one would question. Gregory shifted in his seat. Barely noticeable. But I saw it. And then bigger ones, I added. Hidden through shell accounts. Fake vendors. Redirected payments. Ryan's jaw tightened. Because now, this wasn't just a story. It was familiar. Too familiar. And by the time I caught it, I said quietly, it was already too late. That's when Gregory snapped. He told me everything, he cut in. No, I replied calmly. He told you enough. Silence. Sharp. Uncomfortable. Because deep down, he knew that was true. I spent 6 months gathering proof, I continued. Every transaction. Every email. Every signature. Ryan's breathing changed. Subtle. But faster. Because now, he wasn't just listening. He was feeling it. And then I sat across from him, I said. Just like this. I looked directly at Gregory. Didn't blink. Same table. Same silence. His face tightened. Because now, he wasn't imagining it. He was seeing it. And I gave him a choice. Ryan leaned in slightly. Almost without realizing it. What choice? He asked. There it is. The question. The one that changes everything. Walk away, I said. Shut down the operation he built behind my back. Return what he took. I paused. Let it breathe. Or I take everything to the authorities. The word sat there. Heavy. Unavoidable. Ryan turned slowly. Toward his father. And Gregory? Gregory didn't look back. That was the moment. The exact moment when doubt became real. What happened? Ryan asked quietly. His voice was different now. Not controlled. Not polished. Just honest. And that's when I said it. He ran. Silence. Complete. Total. Like the room itself had stopped breathing. He took what he could, I continued. Disappeared. Left everything else behind. Gregory shook his head. No, he muttered. No, that's not. That's exactly what happened, I cut in. Not louder. Just firmer. More final. And the rest, I added. He turned into a story. Ryan's eyes snapped back to me. What do you mean? I held his gaze. People don't like admitting they lost, I said. So they rewrite it. Gregory stood up suddenly. This is a lie, he shouted. But it didn't land. Not anymore. Because the confidence was gone. All that was left was desperation. You ruined him, he added. No, I said quietly. He ruined himself. And that's when everything broke. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just internally. You could see it. In Ryan. In the way his shoulders dropped slightly. In the way his eyes shifted. Not in anger. But in realization. How long, he said slowly. Without looking at me. How long have you known this? He wasn't talking to me. He was talking to his father. Gregory hesitated. Just for a second. But that second? It said everything. Ryan. How long, he repeated. Sharper now. Stronger. Because now? He needed the truth. And Gregory? Gregory didn't have a clean one to give. I suspected, he said finally. Wrong answer. Ryan let out a short breath. Almost a laugh. But there was no humor in it. You suspected, he repeated. His voice dropped. Cold now. Controlled. You built this entire thing on suspicion. Gregory stepped forward. I was protecting this family. There it is, Ryan said quietly. That phrase. The one people hide behind. I was protecting us. Ryan shook his head slowly. No, he said. You were using me. Silence. Again. But different this time. Because now, it wasn't tension. It was collapse. You knew who he was, Ryan continued. You knew what company I was running. Gregory didn't respond. Didn't need to. Because the truth was already out. You let me get close to Emily, Ryan said. That one hurt. I could hear it. Feel it. You encouraged it, he added. And now his voice cracked. Just slightly. Because this part wasn't business. This was personal. Ryan. Don't, he snapped. And Gregory froze. Because for the first time, his son wasn't following his lead. He was rejecting it. You turned my life into a strategy, Ryan said, each word sharper than the last. You made me part of something I didn't even understand. He looked at me, and there was something in his eyes now. Not guilt. Not fear. Something else. Something stronger. Clarity. I didn't know, he said. I nodded. I believe you. And I did. Because manipulation? It doesn't just target enemies. It uses everyone. Even family. Especially family. Ryan swallowed hard. I sat here, he said quietly, while he tried to corner you. That one hit him. You could see it. And I said nothing. I leaned back slightly. You know why that matters? I asked. He nodded slowly. Yeah, he said. Because that's not who I want to be. There it is. The moment. The turning point. And I felt it. That shift. The one you can't fake. The one that separates who someone was from who they're about to become. But we weren't done. Not even close. Because the biggest truth, the one that would change everything, still hadn't been said. And when it did, it wouldn't just shake this table. It would flip the entire world Ryan thought he was standing in. There's a moment, right before everything collapses, when the room goes quiet in a very specific way. Not peaceful. Not calm. Just still. Like the air itself is waiting. That's exactly where we were. Ryan hadn't moved. Gregory had nothing left to say. And his mother? She looked like she was realizing this wasn't going how she imagined. Not even close. I picked up my glass, took a slow sip, set it back down, and then I said the one thing that changed everything. Ryan, I said quietly, what do you know about how you got your job? He frowned slightly. Confused. Not defensive. Not yet. I was recruited, he said. Executive firm. Multiple interviews. Board approval. He straightened a little, falling back into what he knew. Structure. Logic. Control. It was competitive, he added. It was, I agreed. And that's when the first crack appeared. Because agreement wasn't what he expected. But that's not the whole story, I continued. And just like that, his composure slipped. Slightly. What do you mean? He asked. I leaned forward. Just enough. The firm that recruited you. I paused. Let it hang. Works for me. Silence. Instant. Total. You could feel it slam into the table. Ryan blinked once. Twice. Like his brain refused to process it. The board you interviewed with, I added calmly. They report to me. Gregory's head snapped toward me. Too fast. Too sharp. Because now? He understood. Or at least, he was starting to. The position you've held for the last 14 months, I continued, exists inside a company. I held Ryan's gaze. That I own. That's when it hit him. Not all at once, but in waves. Confusion. Then disbelief. Then something deeper. What, he said. Barely a word. Just a sound. My name, I said slowly, is Ethan Caldwell. I let that sit. Because names matter. Especially when they carry weight. I founded Caldwell Freight and Logistics 22 years ago, I continued. Ryan's face changed. Not dramatically. But enough. Enough to see it. That moment when everything you thought you knew starts falling apart. You've been running my company, I said. No anger. No pride. Just truth. Signing my contracts. Leading my people. Sitting in a chair I placed you in. Nothing. No one moved. Even Gregory had gone completely still. Because now, this wasn't about the past anymore. This was about the present. Power. Reality. Control. Why? Ryan asked finally. And that question? It was real. Stripped of ego. Stripped of position. Just a man trying to understand. His voice was lower now. Honest. Why would you do that? His mother let out a small scoff. So this was a test, she snapped. I didn't even look at her. No, I said calmly. This was me being a father. And that landed harder than anything else. Because suddenly, this wasn't business. This wasn't revenge. This was personal. Deeply personal. I needed to know who you were, I said to Ryan. Not the version you show the world. The real version. He swallowed. Still processing. Still trying to catch up. And he asked. That question. It mattered. Because now, he was asking for judgment. Not as a CEO. Not as a son. As a man. I studied him for a moment. Not long. Just enough. You did well, I said. And I meant it. You made decisions I would have made. You saw problems before they grew. You didn't wait for permission. A pause. Then. But tonight, that's where it shifted again. Because praise only matters when it's followed by truth. Ryan held my gaze. Didn't look away. Tonight, I continued. You sat there while your father tried to corner me. There it is. The weight. The accountability. I didn't know, he started. I know, I cut in gently. And that's the only reason you're still sitting in that chair Monday morning. Silence. Then. Relief. But controlled. Dignified. Because he understood what that meant. It wasn't given. It was earned. In that moment. Right there. And then I turned to Gregory. Slowly. Deliberately. Because this part? This part was for him. "You came here tonight with a weapon," I said. My voice calm. Even. Measured. "You thought those papers would corner me. Force me. Break me." He didn't respond. Couldn't. Because now? He knew. "You didn't bring a weapon," I continued. "You brought a story." A pause. Long enough to settle. "And stories." I leaned forward slightly. "Don't win against truth." His jaw tightened. Hands clenched slightly on the table. But there was nothing left behind his eyes. No confidence. No control. Just loss. "I'm not going after you," I said. That surprised him. I could see it. The slight shift. The confusion. "Not because I can't," I added. "But because I understand something you don't." He looked up. Finally. "What's that?" he asked quietly. "Grief," I said. And that word? It hit differently. Because now, this wasn't about power. It was about something human. "You lost your brother," I continued. "And you built a version of the world that made that loss easier to carry." His eyes flickered. Just slightly. "But that version wasn't real," I finished. Silence. Again. But softer now. He leaned back slowly. Like something inside him had finally given up. Not dramatically. Just done. And then I said the part that ended it. Completely. "Your son married into this family," I said. I glanced at Ryan. Then back at him. "He now leads the company you tried to take." A beat. And the only reason any of that still stands. I paused. Because this mattered. Is because he proved tonight. I looked directly at Ryan. That he's not you. That was it. That was the moment. The final shift. Because there's nothing louder than quiet truth. Gregory exhaled slowly. Like a man who had just realized. He lost something he never actually had. He stood up. Not fast. Not angry. Just finished. "We should go," he said to his wife. She nodded. Didn't argue. Didn't look at me. Didn't look at Ryan. They just left. And just like that, it was over. Or at least, it should have been. But as I sat there, watching that door close, I realized something. This wasn't just about what happened tonight. This was about what came next. Because Ryan wasn't the same man who walked into that restaurant. Not even close. And the decision he was about to make would define everything. His career, his marriage, his future. And maybe mine too. He sat there, silent, processing. Then finally, he looked at me. And what he said next, I didn't expect. Not at all. For a long moment, Ryan didn't say anything. He just sat there, staring at the table like it might give him answers. And honestly, I let him. Because this wasn't a moment you rush. This was the kind of moment that changes a man. Quietly. Permanently. And you could see it happening in real time. The confidence he walked in with. Gone. The certainty. Gone. What replaced it? Something better. Something real. But also something heavier. Because truth comes with weight. And Ryan was feeling all of it. Finally, he exhaled. Long. Slow. Like he'd been holding it in since before dinner even started. "Emily knows?" he asked. That was his first question. Not about the company. Not about his father. Not even about me. Emily. That told me everything. "No," I said. "Not yet." He nodded. Looked down again. Ran both hands through his hair. Trying to organize thoughts that didn't want to be organized. "I need to tell her," he said quietly. "You do," I replied. And then he looked up. Straight at me. I steady now. Not perfect. Not polished. But honest. Completely honest. "I'm sorry." Simple. Direct. No excuses. No performance. And that mattered more than anything else he could have said. "You didn't know enough to stop it," I said. "That's different than choosing it." He shook his head slightly. "I knew enough to question it," he said. "And I didn't." That was the line. Right there. Accountability. Not forced. Not coached. Owned. And I respected that. More than he probably realized. We sat in silence for a second. But this time, it wasn't heavy. It wasn't tense. It was settling. Like everything had finally found its place. Then he said something I didn't expect. "I don't want anything I didn't earn." I raised an eyebrow slightly. "Meaning?" "If I'm staying," he said, "I stay because I deserve that position. Not because of Emily. Not because of you. Not because of tonight." That hit. Because that's not something you can fake. That's something that either exists in you, or it doesn't. "And if I don't," he added. I leaned back in my chair. Studied him for a moment. "You walk away," I said. "No shortcuts. No safety nets. No quiet favors." And he nodded. No hesitation. "Good," he said. And I believed him. Because something had shifted. Not just in the situation. In him. Completely. The waiter showed up again. Like nothing had happened. Like the last hour hadn't just rewritten 3 lives. "Dessert?" he asked carefully. Ryan looked at me. I looked at him. And for the first time that night, I almost smiled. "Yeah," I said. "Let's get dessert." Because sometimes, after everything breaks, you don't storm out. You don't explode. You sit there. And you finish the moment. 2 chocolate lava cakes. 1 black coffee. We ate. Not much talking. Didn't need to. Because some conversations, they don't happen out loud. They happen in what people choose to do next. When we finally walked out, the night air felt different. Cooler. Clearer. Like something had been cleaned out. Ryan stopped before heading to his car. Monday, he said. Monday, I agreed. But we both knew. Monday wasn't about work anymore. It was about truth. All of it. No more layers. No more hidden pieces. Just 2 men. Figuring out what comes next. And that's harder than any business deal. Trust me. I drove home in the same old truck. Same cracked mirror. Same quiet road. But my mind? My mind wasn't the same. Because something I buried a long time ago had finally come back. Not to destroy me, but to close something. Properly. Completely. And that doesn't happen often in life. When I pulled into the driveway, the porch light was on. Emily. She always forgets to turn it off. Or maybe she leaves it on. For me. I sat there for a second. Engine off. Hands on the wheel. Thinking. Not about Gregory. Not about the past. But about what matters. Because at the end of the day, that's what all of this was about. Not money. Not power. Not revenge. Protection. Family. And the line between the two. My phone buzzed. I looked down. A message from Ryan. I told her everything. I stared at it. Then another message came in. She says you're impossible. I smirked. A third message. She also says she loves you. That one stayed. I typed back slowly. Tell her the flannel paid for everything. Sent it. Put the phone down. And stepped out of the truck. The house was quiet. Warm. Safe. Exactly how it should be. And as I walked inside, I realized something. Something most people don't understand until it's too late. Revenge? It's not about hurting the other person. It's not about taking something from them. The real kind? The kind that actually matters? It's about making sure they never had the power to hurt you in the first place. And tonight? That's exactly what happened. Because they came to take something from me. And instead, they walked away understanding something they never expected. They were never in control. Not then. Not now. Not ever. And Ryan? He learned something too. Something most people don't learn until they lose everything. That who you stand with matters more than what you stand on. Because titles? Money? Power? They can all disappear. But character? That's what decides what stays. Weeks later, things settled. Not perfectly. Not easily. But honestly, Ryan stayed. Not because I let him. Because he earned it. Emily knew everything. Every piece. And she didn't break. She adapted. Stronger than both of us expected. Gregory? He disappeared. No calls. No messages. No second attempts. Because deep down, he knew the game was over. And some men? They don't come back after that. They just fade. As for me, nothing changed. And everything did. Same truck. Same house. Same flannel. But now, there was something different. Peace. The kind you only get when the past stops knocking and finally lets you go. If you made it this far, just remember this. Not everyone who smiles at your table is there to eat with you. Some are there to take your seat. But the real power is knowing exactly who they are before they make their move. And if you think this story was intense, you have no idea what's coming next. Because the next one, it doesn't just test loyalty, it destroys it. So subscribe now. Because the next story might change how you see everyone around you.